I've made this animation to explain how I believe grief changes over time. Imagine that all of our life experiences can be contained in a box like this. Now imagine that this box represents a 7-year-old me. Inside of that box would be all of the life experiences I had had up until that point in time. As a 7-year-old, I had had many great life experiences. I took my first steps, went camping, learned to ride a bicycle, things like that. All of those different experiences went into my box. I've also included a little button to visually represent pain, and I'll talk more about that later. My life continued, and many more experiences filled my box. As I gained more experiences, the box grew larger and larger. Then one day, my life changed forever. My father died, and my world was filled with grief. That grief pushed up against my pain button, and I learned how painful losing someone could really be. But I didn't stay 7 years old, and my grief didn't go away. Many decades later, when I was 48, my box of life experiences had grown, but it still held that grief from when my father had died. The size of that grief didn't change over time. Sometimes life would be jostled around, and that grief would push up against a pain button again. Certain dates triggered this grief: holidays like Christmas, celebrations like graduations from high school and college, my wedding day, the birth of my children, the annual anniversary of his death. These were days when I could feel the grief all over again. I learned to live around my grief. My life experiences provided a kind of cushion around it. But losing my father wasn't the only thing that happened. I lost my mother, my father in law, my mother in law, and I broke my big toe. And then one day, the most unimaginable thing happened. My husband died, and my entire world was once again filled with grief. This time, it was the heaviest grief I had ever experienced. This is what my life experience box looks like today. I'm 50 years old, and all of the grief and loss that I have experienced is still in there. It hasn't lessened in size, but my life has once again grown around it. There's a small cushion that allows me to have moments where I feel okay, but one little bump in my life, and one of those grief events pushes the pain button. This happens often, but less and less over time as I continue to add more life experiences to cushion it. The idea that grief disappears with time is a myth to me. Time really does not heal all wounds. You really do not get over grief. Life does not return to normal after significant loss, and grief really never disappears, no matter what your perspective is. We learn to cushion it with life. I hope that this has been a helpful video for you, and I encourage you to join me on my websites and follow me on social media. Thank you so much.